Welcome to a Trekzone conversation. Today, Larry Nemechek's back to reflect on the legacy of writer Dorothy Fontana, not just with Star Trek, and also the news overnight that Robert Walker Jr. from her episode Charlie X has also passed away.
Now, in its 7th year of podcasting, Trekzone presents a Trekzone conversation with your host, Matt Miller.
Well, he's back for another week to chat more Trek with me. Larry Nemechek, thanks so much for your time. Unfortunately, not under better circumstances this week.
Hey, Matt. Well, thank you for having me back. I hope this doesn't keep happening so that you have to keep having me. I mean, I'd rather talk under other circumstances, I guess.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
yes.
The passing of a real, and we throw these words around, icon and legend and, founding father or founding mother. But Dorothy Fontana, I said this week that I realized how spoiled I was that we are, because she was like a direct pipeline right to 1964 or 1966.
Yeah, and she gave us some incredible episodes that she penned. Vulcan culture, computers taking over can be a bad thing. Kirk having a bad attitude and giving the Federation a cloaking device. Also helping out with Jadzia Dax on trial for the actions of her previous host. And we can't forget Encounter at Farpoint, the beginning of The Next Generation. Just some of her many credits that I've put together on Trekzone this week.
Well, I hope you included Yesteryear and overseeing the first season of the animated series, too.
I will include those when this article goes out. But in my original article back on Wednesday, it was those ones. But yeah, so much. She did so much, not just for Star Trek, but for female science fiction writers as well.
Yeah, when you think that, DC Fontana is a giveaway. Although, as I saw somebody on a woman writer saying today, well, I still use my initials because I still feel that pressure. And, we think about the revolution, hopefully the giant leavening of all minorities, of gender equality, of all that, but it still exists and people still feel that. But the fact that she was able to do that, it's amazing. We talked about Dorothy all week, and people start with the episodes, obviously, like, the fact that, Spock and Vulcans and Sarek and Amanda she created, and on the side, the Andorians and the Tellarites. Okay. All of her classic episodes, and This Side of Paradise, and yes, and you mentioned the Enterprise incident, the stolen cloaking device, but also, hey, the Romulan commander and Spock again. So she had that, touch. But then, step back a moment, and she was recurringly there with the animated series and the roots of TNG. And although they didn't always maybe end up on a happy note, like she left first season, because I think a lot of times that's where her, even though she kept getting this shot and we love her today and her creations for Trek, and she had many other credits before and after too. Let's she wasn't a one-trick pony here, but she, as much as we ballyhoo her for being able to do what she did hit the glass ceiling many, many times, and that was a source of friction, obviously. But the fact that we just had her for so long, and that's what, we had her on the Trek Files for 6 episodes and getting to talk about a wide range of moments. But just the fact that she lectured at the AFI, and she mentored so many writers over the years, and would talk. It's just so friendly, and would talk to fans. She would do conventions, big and small, and just talk to anybody and give people advice on their writing, and just a really open, sharing wonderful person. And I just thought she'd be with us forever, and then they're not, and you go, but then you treasure the fact that even if getting to know her was wonderful, especially the last few years, but everybody benefits from as many interviews as she did, documentaries and DVD Blu-ray interviews, and podcasts and interviews and convention appearances, and we have all that to treasure now.
What's your fondest moment of getting to sit down with Dorothy and talk about Trek?
As much as I'd been an original series fan, my time and money, my income was all coming from The Next Generation onward. She was always good about answering. Once she knew who you were, she would answer email questions a lot. But it wasn't until just the last 5, 6, 7 years that we would have sit downs and have extended conversations and then kind of climaxing on the podcast. But I had several conventions where we got to sit and talk. And I remember I shared this one of my favorite moments is at Condor, this little small San Diego convention, not the big Comic-Con, but the small Trek and MediaCon in 2016 for the 50th. And they had David Gerald and John and Bejo Trimble and Dorothy and her husband Denny Skolak, who's an Oscar-winning visual effects artist. And then they were nice enough to have myself in too. But we were walking out a door and some guy was cosplaying as an Andorian. And we were walking along and she just stopped and kind of looked at him and said, "An Andorian, I created you." And it was just one of those funny moments that you go, "Oh, that's great." I took a picture. We recreated the moment. But I'd carried this also at that time. I'd carried the script around for ages, just assuming it was the original way that she was going to introduce Joanna McCoy, McCoy's daughter, who she never got to see in film. They finally turned up a little bit in an animated episode. But in live action, Joanna became the Russian girlfriend of Chekhov because Fred Freiberger didn't think that McCoy was old enough to have a daughter that Kirk could fall for without it being, weird. But this script had Joanna McCoy, and I bought it in like the 80s. And I finally got to say, "Would you autograph this?" And she looked at it and she says, "I never wrote this." There'd been 30 years, and it had gotten into memory alpha that way, that this was hers. And so we had this great discussion about that. And anyway, a lot of things.
One of the episodes that she did pen right at the beginning of Star Trek in the formative season, Charlie X, unfortunately some news overnight that Robert Walker Jr.'s passed away as well, who portrayed the titular character.
And, he came from acting his father, Robert Walker Sr., I guess. And yeah, such a memorable. It's always struck me how I guess there was something in the DNA of Trek, and maybe it's akin to say like, parents and then their famous parents and then their offspring that get famous maybe, or it's rougher for the kids or something, because the original series as the parent series, maybe nobody thought of it that way in those days, obviously, till the spinoffs started happening. But it's amazing how we may look back and think of the original series as the only Star Trek that was like solid in the first season. The joke about it takes 3 years to mature a Star Trek series before everybody's happy with it. But you think of those early episodes that really made Trek and attracted the audience out of the gate. And and it's a Yeoman Rand, it's a Grace Lee Whitney, Janice Rand episode too, which is such a big. It's kind of amazing when you think of those early episodes and how they were looking at the characters, and Rand is such a big part of that episode. But it's a classic, and it's got that early series charm because Rand is in it, and Uhura gets to sing, and everyone's got a big part. It's almost like before things slide into, in stereotypes of thought, but you can see it just still feels fresh now when you watch it. But yeah, it's obvious that Dorothy had a great grasp on what was going on there with the characters, and good. It's a double-edged sword. Like, good on Gene for letting her come out of the, quote-unquote secretarial pool and write that way, but then bad on him and the industry for, kind of keeping her down and not giving her her due, and so many other women their due. But she did shine enough to where her name was on things, and fans sitting watching, first wave or second wave fandom watching the daily reruns after school. When you saw when you saw DC Fontana on the credits, you kind of went, after a while it's sinking in that these are pretty good, This Side of Paradise and Journey to Babel and Enterprise Incident and several more, that was a good show. She, don't let her go. Keep her around. When you found out it was a her.
Yeah. The product of the time with the way that was all treated, as you say, the secretarial pool. Star Trek acknowledged that in Far Beyond the Stars with the Deep Space Nine episode, and I think even there it was, or one of the inspirations for the female character that Terry Farrell played in there was Dorothy's experience and just the way things were. Not that they're not that they were good, but that's the way things were, and to acknowledge that, and for Dorothy to be a pioneer, such, these words, as you say, we bring them out every now and then, but it's very true that she was a pioneer, and she led the way forward for female writers in science fiction, in television and movies in general.
Yeah, and when you think about the fact that she did it quietly, I mean, it's like if you were lucky enough, for one thing, they have there's a saying, but anybody who's not, the white guy, basically, to be blunt about it, like you have to work twice as hard, you have to be twice as talented to get maybe the same amount of credit, income and all that. It's one of the inequalities that we should all be working to eliminate. But it's a testament to, here she is without a lot of fanfare, and she came to L.A., to write. She wanted to be a writer. She didn't wake up one day as a secretary and go, gosh, I'm a good writer. I should, stumble into this. No, she wanted to be a writer, and she was going down the path that is one of the paths that people could be to do, and she, wrote, and she let her work, her output was her calling card, and she fell in with writers. I say guys because that's who it was. Working with Sam Peoples, who was in the same orbit with Gene. In fact, we got into this on some of the Trek Files episodes, one in particular. But she was in the circle of people and then filled in for Gene's secretary one time, and they got along. And then when he went on to his next project, she went with Gene to the lieutenant, and she was his assistant. The fact that she was doing that, well, today we'd go, well, yeah, she was like, nose to the grindstone. She just had to be that good to get noticed, despite the fact she was a woman, and be taken seriously. And the fact that she was a secretary by day, and which everyone's doing. Anyone trying to break in is saying, hey, can you read my script? There are, the waiters and the notorious Hollywood, are you a writer or are you an actor? Would you rather be waited on by a would-be actor or a would-be writer or a would-be director? But the fact that she did get herself out, she did lift herself by her bootstraps. She did survive as a woman, and she did it at a time before, what do I say, militancy. She couldn't jump up and say, hey, I'm a woman and I'm fighting for my right. She just had to do the damn thing because no one cared about anyone. Because if you made noise, then you were out of there. And the fact, and so she was, but that's it. She was so down to earth, and you could see that dealing with her now, and you hear her voice on interviews and see her in documentaries. She had to be unflappable and just get the work done and no nonsense. She has a great sense of humor and can laugh, but you can see how, she's just direct and gets the job done for two reasons. One, she was a woman and had a success, and two, especially, if not overall in the industry, especially by the time she got to Star Trek and the crazy, I don't want to say old boys group, but the crazy, but all the books and reference and interviews are full of the tricks and the practical jokes back and forth. And then she worked for a boss who was the mistress this month that was in the back room of his office. I mean, to be blunt about it. And she was like, she thrived you could just tell she was the stable one. That I almost wonder, and Bob Justman had a notoriously dry, droll sense of humor, but he was also notorious about getting the work done, and he was the one that would get up on Gene's desk and say, "You've got to finish this rewrite." I mean, he was another one that made the trains run on time, and Dorothy did it, as a woman, and was kind of the counterpoint there. So in the middle of the crazy that was the original series, and then the chaos on the bridge of the first year of Next Generation, she's the unflappable one that got through that and thrived and got her work done, especially on the original series. So, it's just like, how many more layers of remarkable can we pile on here to say, yes, she was a pioneering woman writer. She was incredibly talented because she had to be to survive.
Yes. And
then just to survive the crazy. We're talking about all this now. We didn't talk about it so much these ways. We did when you did, but I think in the consciousness of most fans, people didn't think about it that way until she's gone, and then we go, oh, right, yes. We maybe even see how much we took that for granted.
And especially someone like Dorothy that really was up there with Gene and all those other people that helped shape Star Trek, the franchise that it is today. So we do thank her for that. Unfortunately for many people, it's posthumous thanks, but it is thanks nonetheless, and she will always be part of the great Star Trek story. Oh,
obviously. And it was heartening to see a lot of the Picard and Discovery folks, who, especially those who were fans and knew their fandom bones, to paying homage to Dorothy this week as well.
Larry, it's been brilliant to chat Dorothy Fontana with you and Robert Walker as well. A sad way to bring you back to the show week in, week out, but there's always Trek to talk about, and there's always the future is bright, as they say, and the show must go on.
Yes, well, we're on the cusp of a brave new era for Star Trek, so hopefully we won't have memorial headlines every week. We'll have a lot of new Trek in the mix here to talk about too, man.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, you can find Larry on Twitter at Larry Nemenchek, myself at Miramat86, the Trek Files, and so much more on Facebook. Larry, thank you very much. Better let you go and have a weekend.
Trek well, Matt.